Once a month, I go and see my physical therapist, Deb, who is fantastic, and she helps me to do very small exercises that keep my back pain from getting worse. So I've had to adjust things for a long time, and that's why I play the smaller body Martin. It's why I use a certain kind of stool for my solo shows, and I've had to think about my strap height and all sorts of little things that add up to being able to play without tension. I've studied Alexander technique and different kind of things to address some of these problems. And what I've been thinking about lately is that a lot of exercises, whether it's for singing or guitar practice or my PT, all of these things that I'm supposed to do every day and rarely do, they require extremely small moments of mastery. So today I'm going to talk about tiny moments of mastery and how applying good form just for a few seconds, just every once in a while, as frequently as you can, adds up a lot. But first, we're going to talk about this beautiful sound from Earth. A lovely earth sound. That is from a creek in Clinton, Connecticut. I was loading in for a show, and I was parked next to this creek, and I thought, wow, what a beautiful little place and beautiful little sound. So please, if you're listening and you hear anything nice, record that with your phone and send it over to me so I can include it in a future episode. All right, for a bit of old news. For episode 37 of Earth Tones. Bit of old news. I've got here a copy of Tape Op from August 2021. Tape Op is a great magazine. It's free if you subscribe online and you tell them that you're an audio engineer and you answer a short survey. Their advertisers are interested in advertising to people who are interested in making music. And so, if you're willing to answer a few questions once a year about how you make music, then they will send you the magazine for free. And I think it comes out every couple of months, and it's amazing. It's so good. It's all about recording, but they have wonderful interviews with different engineers and artists, all about how they make music. So, I happened to grab this off the shelf. I thought I'm going to grab a Tape Op magazine, and I opened to a random page, and wouldn't you know, one of my favorite people ever, Mad Professor. He is a wonderful dub recording engineer. I was actually able to see him a couple of years ago when 10 Foot Ganja Plant played in Ithaca, New York, and he played on the Friday night, and 10 Foot played on the Saturday night. Neil Fraser, he is the Mad Professor. So this is a great interview with him all about his recording techniques and running a studio. And this is in 2021, so it's not too old. And at the end of it, I thought this was really beautiful. They were talking about how he has a unique voice. And so the interviewer says, "How do you find your voice as an artist through mixing?" And he said, "You sure you want to say voice? When you say voice, my first reaction is, I can't sing. I don't have the voice, but I know you don't mean literally." And he says, "I don't mean literally, no." He said, "I just find it amazing that you chose the word voice." And the interviewer says, "The reason I do is because I know your mixes from the second they come on every time. Your mixes are your voice." And Matt Professor said, "Right. Probably it's the sound of the studio. It's a DNA thing with me. I could be in a room when I hear a track, and it could be the snare of the track or the delay. I'll say, ooh, I worked on that track. It's something with the DNA of some engineers where you put your stamp on the track. I don't know how." And the interviewer says, "There's something about the atmosphere or the way that you approach it that is different." And he said, "Yeah, you could tell me more than I could, but yeah, I know it is recognizable. How? I don't know. God alone could tell us. I don't know." And he tells him, "Well, that's a good gift." And Matt Professor says, "Yeah, it's one of those things, man. You just do it." I think that is brilliant. It's a very casual little exchange, but it reveals something significant, and that is that you can't always figure these things out and make it in such a contrived way. You just do what sounds good to you, and ultimately your style comes about over the years. So Matt Professor didn't say, well, I spent all this time figuring out all the calculations to create my exact voice as a dub engineer, and this is going to be my delay, and this is going to be my snare. He pretty much said, I don't even know what makes me me, but it is what makes me me, and I just do things that way, and it ends up being recognizable. I think there's something to be said about that, how you could just kind of continue going about your business, doing your thing, and ultimately it becomes who you are if you stay true to what you're interested in. All right, for our main discussion, Tiny Moments of Mastery, episode 37. Here it is. Lately, I've been practicing and exercising, and it's occurred to me that many of our greatest improvements come from very small moments. I've spoken before about how practicing for only 5 minutes can be enough to get better at something. But what about 5 seconds? When you lift a piece of equipment out of your car, it only takes about 5 seconds. If you do it wrong, you can tweak your back and be out of commission for weeks. Or how about learning something new? Figuring out a new fingering for a difficult passage in a piece of music may take less than 30 seconds. The challenge is to just focus directly on the issue at hand. When I work on singing a little phrase I'm trying to improve, I may sing it hundreds of times, trying out different ways to approach it. In the end, it just sounds like me singing a couple of words, but I've worked towards mastering those tiny moments. Bruce Lee is quoted as saying, I fear not the man who has practiced 10,000 kicks once, but I fear the man who has practiced one kick 10,000 times. You can't stack them all at once. It has to be cumulative. You can't say, well, let me do 10 kicks at a time. That'll get me through 10,000 faster. There's a lot of things in life like this, where proper form applied for a few seconds makes all the difference. I've thought about this with landscaping, for example. Sometimes you have to move 10 yards of mulch, and it seems daunting. But you can't move 10 yards of mulch all at once. You do a single shovelful over and over again. You master a single shovelful, and the work is as good as done. So yeah, I think, I was doing pull-ups. I'm trying to get to be able to do 5 proper pull-ups. I can do like 3 not proper pull-ups. And maybe I can do 1 now. After a couple weeks, I can probably do like 1 with good form. And if you think about it, like it probably only takes a few seconds, but you have to master doing that. And to do something at the level where it's really masterful and has good form, that takes time, of course, but ultimately, just trying something and investigating it, it's really brief moments that we're trying to get things to be in shape. We're trying to attack them in a way that has flow and grace and form that allows you to do it 10,000 times. All right, for a musical demonstration, let's imagine that we're playing in C. And you're going to play normally a C major scale. Well, if you learn your modes, you might learn that the 4th mode, if you start the C major scale on F, then you would get the F major scale, but with a sharp 4, so it ends up being Lydian mode. So it ends up being this sound. So that's the C major scale starting on the 4th of the key. You end up with F Lydian, which has this ethereal sound. Well, if you want to play C Lydian, there's only one note that had to change, and that was the 4th note. It needed to become a sharp 4. That means that it ends up being the 4th mode of the key of G major. But we're not going to talk about all the theory. We're just thinking about this idea. If you're playing C major scale and you raise the 4th note a half step, we end up with C Lydian. It might only take a couple of seconds to find that note F sharp. I've come up with a musical idea. So you didn't need to learn all of your modes. You just needed to say, I've heard about this thing called Lydian. How does it work? Well, it has the note F sharp in it. And how can I find the note F sharp? Okay, there it is. So can I play this chord and add that note to it? And there, now you have it. It only took a few seconds. Now, granted, I already know where it was, but that couple of seconds of mastery might be saying, okay, this is E, that's F sharp. Okay, well, I mastered for a second just finding that note F sharp. It only took a couple seconds. If you work with what you have and you just challenge yourself with something very specific, it'll only be a few seconds later before you've learned something. What is on the turntable? On the turntable this week, the legendary Layla and Assorted Love Songs, Derek and the Dominoes. Maybe Eric Clapton and Jeff Beck are going to be tied for most frequent appearances on Earth Tones, because I think Eric Clapton has showed up a few times too. So, yep. What can you say about this? 1970. One thing that I'll say about this that's interesting, of course, this is legendary, one of the brief bands of Eric Clapton. He could only have a band for a year or two, and they would make something extremely legendary and then break up, like Cream or Blind Faith and Derek and the Dominoes, Delaney and Bonnie. The list goes on and on. Even the Yardbirds, he was only in for a year or two. So, yeah, he was not a long member of any band. But Derek and the Dominoes, this record, what I think is interesting is they cover Little Wing, and it comes out in the fall of 1970 when Jimi Hendrix dies. But they recorded it in August while he was alive. So I wonder, I bet I can find out. I think it said August to September they were recording. I wonder if it was always intended to be on the album or if he had just passed away and they recorded it quickly. I have a feeling that they were recording it anyways and that it was done a couple months before Jimmy died. And that means when they put this out in November, it was only a couple months after he died, it must have meant a lot to have a Jimi Hendrix song on the record that they just released. Something that helped me this week, taking a risk and bringing a loop pedal that I just got. I just got this pedal called the Boomerang, and I was researching looping pedals, and there was a lot of different new ones that I was reading about, and I was researching. Ed Sheeran has his own series, and of course there's all the Boss ones. In the past I had the little Ditto one and a 2-pedal Boss one, but both of them only did a single track, and I was interested in having, being able to do at least 2 tracks. And I was looking at different things, and I thought, oh, you know what about the Boomerang that Trey Anastasio used to use in Fish? Maybe I should check that out. And I looked it up. And also Roger Clark Miller from Mission of Burma has a wonderful, that should be maybe the vinyl next week, has a wonderful composition it's called like Variations on Dreams. And he plays all these different loops with different guitars and steel guitars that are like prepared with different types of things. And that's how I was thinking about the Boomerang a couple years ago, is because Roger Clark Miller uses it. And I looked it up, and it has every feature that I could want. It's just basic, but you can make one loop and extend it into the others, and you can have multiple tracks and adjust the volume of each, and you can start them all, and you can fade them in and out, and it's everything that I would want with no screens. And I was a little hesitant because I was like, man, this thing came out in 2009. That's 17 years ago. Should I take a risk and get it? So I did. It seems to be perfect, and I got it, and I got it Wednesday night, and yesterday I had a gig on Thursday. And I had it all ready to go, and I was like, I don't know, man. I've only played with this for an hour. Should I bring it? And I brought it, and it's a testament to how usable it is, but also the idea that, something that was helpful for me this week was to just take a risk and say, just show up, and you'll have logged 1 gig with this. And I ended up doing some cool things. I was looping, playing like a G chord. I put this sort of loop in, and then I was able to play which is Red-Haired Boy, a bluegrass tune. And I've never been able to play any bluegrass or Celtic like fiddle songs on a solo gig before. And I had no intention of doing that. I just was jamming in G, and then I put down that little loop and played a song. And so, not knowing how it'll go and giving it a go anyways, I'd say, is what helped me this week. All right, friends, that is episode 37. You can visit jakeparty.com for more information about me and my music, and maritimerecording.com for more information about you and your music. If you're interested in guitar lessons or music production, come on by. I'm Jake Pardee signing off, reminding you, as always, that we are a musically musical species on a musically musical planet. And I will see you next time for episode 38.